everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about how you can become a GP, and I'm going to start with how you can get onto the GP training program. So I talk about my career in much more detail in two previous videos, which I will link up for you to have a look at. First thing you have to do, like with anything, is you have to apply. You apply online. You apply through a website or platform called ORIEL. You obviously have to check that you're eligible. If you've completed the foundation program, then you really should be eligible, but just make sure you go through the criteria and just tick off all the boxes. Now you have to look for your eligibility. So if you scroll down, you can go to eligibility requirements. This will bring up the GP ST1 person specification 2020. So scroll down and you will come to general practice and you view download. That will come up with the person specification in a PDF document. It tells you exactly what you must have. So you must have a medical degree or equivalent. And then you just have to go through and just check everything, like your fitness to practice, your language skills, etc, etc. So make sure you read all of that, and then obviously you'll be able to apply. So once you've submitted your application, you will then have to go on and take a written test. Of course, not now because of the coronavirus pandemic, but if this wasn't the case, then you would be invited to a test center where you would take the test on a computer. So the test is called a Multi Specialty Recruitment Assessment, that's a mouthful, or MSRA. There is a blueprint and information document which you must read before you take the test. So for the Multi Specialty Recruitment Assessment, MSRA, you can click, you'll get another PDF document. So again, just go through the document, have a read, make sure you read all of it. It tells you about sitting, it tells you about the structure. I would definitely recommend you have to read this blueprint and information, and there are some sample questions in the resource bank. So have a look, make sure you have a thorough look over everything. And just to briefly summarize the test, so there's a SJT or Situational Judgement Test component. In this test, you assume the role of an F2 or FY2 Foundation Year Doctor 2. There will be a combination of ranking and multiple choice questions. So there could be a scenario where you have to rank order of importance or order of what you would do. So for example, there's an angry relative on the ward. You have to go over and speak to them. What do you do? 1, do you shout back? 2, do you try and placate them, apologize for what may have gone wrong? 3, do you apologize, ask them if they want to make a complaint, etc, etc. So you have the SJT or professional dilemmas, and then you have the clinical aspect of the test or clinical problem solving. There are 12 clinical areas, and there are target domains such as prescribing, investigations. And the second part of the test will have the format of combination of EMQs or extended matching questions and SBAs or single best answers. I would really encourage you, and also when you look on the website, it's really emphasized that you must go through how the test will look on the day. There is a tutorial that you can run through, and as I said, I would strongly advise that you do that so that you're not flustered and you know what to expect when it's the day of your test. So for those who have done exceptionally well, they'll get a direct pathway to offer. So what that means is that they won't have to do the practical component. So you will have a higher chance of getting the place that you want, basically. And this is what I was talking about with direct pathway to offers. So you have to have a combined total score of 550 in the MSRA. And this will qualify for a streamlined route. So you don't have to attend the face-to-face assessment at the selection centre. So what they're saying here is that you'll be ranked before those who were deemed appointable via the selection centre, and this will increase your chance of receiving an offer. Of course, like the majority of applicants, if you didn't get this amazing score, you will have to undergo the practical assessment. I had to do it. I didn't get the 550. So you go to the selection centre if obviously you haven't qualified, and then you do the practical assessments. Now I would again recommend that you read all the information and you go through the tutorial. You'll get more information the further along you are in the process, so they'll definitely send you information about the selection centre details. So in the written part of the exam, similar to the SJT, you have to rank options. So you'll be given a scenario, and then you have to rank in order of what is the best option, what's the first thing you do, what's the very last thing you would do, and then you have to justify why you've made those choices. When I look back at my exam, I had to do that first, if I remember correctly, and then I went on to the practical aspect of the exam. So the practical aspect includes a number of simulations. So the simulations will include a consultation with a patient, a consultation with a relative or carer, and then a consultation with a colleague who's a non-medical. Now, by doing all of this, you're being assessed, and the things you're being assessed on are: number one, communication skills, which we know is imperative to being an outstanding GP. Number two, empathy and sensitivity. Make sure you know the difference between empathy and sympathy as well. And conceptual thinking and problem solving, and professional integrity. After this, you'll obviously have to wait a while before all the scores are calculated and then distributed, and then you'll receive an offer. And there are a number of things you can do after you get the email or the correspondence about your offer. You can obviously accept your offer. From my memory, you can either hold and wait for a better offer to come through, and then you can accept an offer based off of that. So that's the GP training program application process in a nutshell. But of course, you have to go and do a bit more reading, a bit more research as to the actual tests, the written and the practical components. And of course, there are a lot of resources you can use to increase your chances. Now, what I would encourage is practicing in small groups. I did that. I practiced with a colleague. It was just 2 of us. But of course, if you've got 3 people, 4 people, then great. Practice, 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 so that when you go into the assessment, like any practical assessment, you will not feel flustered, you'll not panic, you'll feel very comfortable. Okay, not that comfortable, but you won't feel as nervous as if you hadn't practiced at all. Okay, so you've made it, you've successfully applied to the GP training program, you've got in, and you're on your journey to becoming a GP. So what next? So the GP training program, as it stands at the moment, is still 3 years. So what you do is 18 months of hospital placements and 18 months of general practice. My placements were as follows. I started off in general practice for 6 months. Then I rotated to palliative medicine in a hospice. And then I went on to do care of the elderly. And then I went on to do obstetrics and gynecology. And then I went back to general practice for my final year. My placements were 6 months. Some placements are 4 months. It depends on where you are training. Before you start your placements, it's a good idea to obviously get the portfolio, the Royal College of General Practitioners portfolio. You have to pay for it. You sign up, you pay, and you have a look around. What you do is you have to fill in a few things, declarations, a personal development plan or PDP before you start your first placement. You'll be assigned a supervisor who will go through your personal development plan with you and general things. Throughout the years, do a number of assessments. If you did the foundation program, it will be quite similar. You have to do a number of assessments throughout the year and be competent in those in particular areas. So the same applies for general practice. Your supervisor watches you in some cases. So you have 2 supervisors. So you have an educational and a clinical one. And it's the clinical supervisor that may watch you do a number of different procedures or examinations. Now on top of this, you have to do an audit, and you have to do a complete audit, which means you have to do a re-audit. You have to complete the audit cycle. You have to do exams. So you have to do the applied knowledge test, or AKT, which is a written assessment, and then you have to do the practical exam, the CSA, or clinical skills assessment. You can only do the AKT in your 2nd year, and this is how it stands at the moment. It may change. And then the CSA is done in your final year. There are other things you have to complete, like out of hours training, so that's working in the evenings or on weekends at particular hospitals. During out of hours training, you'll also have a supervisor, and you will have a tutorial of half an hour. So you'll see patients in the GP part of the hospital, and then you'll be assigned a time where you go and sit with your supervisor and discuss the cases that you've seen, or discuss something else that you want to discuss or that your trainer feels is important to discuss with you. I will be doing another video where I discuss the pros and cons to GP training. So that's how to become a GP and how to apply to the GP training program. Of course, make sure you read everything on the GP recruitment website.